1. We're checking out this pretty sweet 1985 GMC Caballero that just popped up on Craigslist for $2,500. Let me tell you, these El Camino cousins are getting harder to find, especially in this condition. This blue beauty is rocking a 350 V8 under the hood, paired with an automatic transmission sending power to the rear wheels. Classic American muscle truck setup right there. With 120,300 miles on the clock, it's been driven, but clearly well maintained. The seller's description is actually backing up what we can see. The interior is all original with no dash cracks, which is seriously impressive for an 85. And all the power goodies are there. Windows, locks, even the factory stereo with a cassette player for that perfect period-correct feel. What's really catching my eye here is that everything seems to be in excellent shape. The chrome is good, all glass is intact, and it's apparently ready for daily driving duties, whether you're cruising around town or hitting the highway. That's pretty rare for a vehicle pushing 40 years old. For $12,500, considering the current market for these unique GM car trucks and the apparent condition, it's actually in the ballpark of fair pricing. These Caballeros are becoming more collectible, and finding one that's both clean and drivable isn't easy anymore. Just remember, you're not just buying a vehicle here. You're getting a piece of automotive history that'll definitely turn heads at Cars and Coffee. 2. We're looking at something really special. A 1963 Chevy C20 that's far from stock, and boy do I mean far. This thing's listed at $25,000, and let me walk you through why this price might actually make sense. First off, this isn't your grandpa's work truck anymore. Under the hood, we're talking serious business. A Gen 6 454 that's been bored out to 460 cubic inches, paired with a modern 6L80E transmission. The builder wasn't messing around here. We're seeing some serious performance parts like AFT 325cc aluminum heads, a ZZ5002 camshaft, and an Edelbrock intake manifold. The attention to detail continues with ARP head studs and MSD coils, all the good stuff you'd want in a high-performance build. The fuel system's been completely thought out with an inline pump, dual filters, and a Magna pressure regulator. The transmission setup is equally impressive with a billet stall converter and a serious 40K transcooler. They've even gone with an aluminum drive shaft to handle all that power. The exhaust system is properly done too. Hooker headers flowing into a 3-inch mandrel bent system with ceramic coating and V-band connections. That's the kind of detail that shows this wasn't just thrown together. With only 10,000 miles showing, likely since the build, and fresh rubber all around, this is essentially a modern performance vehicle in a classic wrapper. At $25,000, considering the quality of components used and the apparent thoroughness of the build, you're looking at a lot less than what it probably cost to put together. Remember folks, this isn't a restored stock C20. This is a serious performance build that happens to wear a '63 Chevy body. For someone looking for a unique, high-performance classic truck, this could be a pretty solid deal. 3. We're checking out this 1975 Ford F-250 Extra Cab that's popped up for $15,000. Let me give you the honest scoop on this classic Ford pickup. What we've got here is a red F-250 with the beefy FE390 V8 engine. That's a solid power plant that Ford used in everything from trucks to Thunderbirds back in the day. It's paired with a 3-speed automatic transmission, and being a 75 model, you won't have to deal with smog testing, which is definitely a plus for potential buyers in strict emission states. The truck's showing 100,000 miles and comes with some nice amenities, power steering, power brakes, and an aftermarket AC system, plus a nice stereo setup. The seller's being straight up about this one needing some TLC, which is refreshing honesty in the classic truck market. This appears to be a project that stalled out when the owner's son lost interest. Now let's talk about that $15,000 price tag. In today's market, where classic trucks have gone absolutely nuts, this isn't outrageous, but it's firm according to the seller. Given that it needs some work, you'll want to factor that into your decision. These extra cab F-250s aren't super common, and the 390 is a desirable engine, but you'll want to inspect those areas needing TLC before pulling the trigger. For the right buyer who's willing to put in some work, This could be a cool project truck. The bones are good. It runs and drives well according to the seller, and these old Fords are generally pretty straightforward to work on. 4. We're looking at a pretty interesting 1978 Chevy Scottsdale K10 that's up for grabs at $9,000. Let me break this one down for you honestly. This is a 4x4 long bed with the classic 350 V8 and a 4-speed manual transmission with a high-low range. Exactly what you'd want in an old-school work truck. The seller's being refreshingly straightforward about this one, noting it performs as well as a 47-year-old 175 horsepower truck can. I appreciate that kind of honesty. Now there are some good points here. It's got a rebuilt 12-bolt rear end with a limited slip differential, which is definitely a plus. They've upgraded the suspension with new high-capacity leaf springs and Bilstein shocks, and it's riding on newer Toyo all-terrains. The custom brush guard and diamond plate rear bumper add some functionality, and it's set up for towing with a hitch and harness. Here's what you need to know though. The odometer's broken, so while it shows 45,000 miles, take that with a grain of salt. This is being sold as what it is, a potential farm truck or restoration project, not a finished showpiece. For $9,000, you're getting a solid platform with some good upgrades, but remember this is a project truck. These K10s are getting harder to find, especially in 4x4 configuration with the manual transmission, and prices have been climbing. The mechanical upgrades already done are a bonus, but you'll likely want to put some work into it depending on your intended use. 5. We're checking out a 1976 Chevy C30 Cheyenne that's popped up for $7,500, and I'll tell you straight up what we're looking at here. This is a classic square-body 1-ton Chevy, rocking the tried-and-true small-block 350 V8, paired with an automatic transmission. The seller's keeping it pretty brief in the description, but they're claiming it runs and drives excellently, which is always good to hear for a truck pushing close to 100,000 miles on the odometer. Now being a C30, this is the heavy-duty model of the lineup, which means it was built for serious work. These trucks were workhorses back in the day, and many still are. The gray paint looks decent in a utilitarian way, and being a Cheyenne trim level, it would have come with a few more comfort features than the base model. At $7,500 OBO, or best offer, the price point is actually pretty reasonable in today's market for a running and driving classic truck, especially considering it's a 1-ton model. The seller's also open to trades, which might be interesting for some of you out there. Here's the thing though, the description is pretty minimal, so you'll definitely want to do a thorough inspection before pulling the trigger. These C30s are generally pretty solid trucks, but at 47 years old, you'll want to check all the usual suspects: rust in the cab corners, bed mounts, and frame, plus all the mechanical components. For someone looking for a classic work truck or a solid platform for a project, this could be worth checking out. Just remember, it's a 76 heavy-duty truck. It's going to drive like one. 6. We're diving into something pretty special, a 1969 Chevy C10 that's far from stock, listed at $17,500. Let me break down this build for you because there's a lot to unpack here. First off, let's talk about that heart transplant. This C10's running a fresh blueprint racing 355 small block with less than 500 miles on it, dynoed at 373 horsepower and 413 FTLBs of torque. That's some serious muscle. They've done this build right with a Messier electric water pump and a Champion 4-core radiator with dual electric fans to keep everything cool. The fuel system is completely modernized with an aeromotive setup. We're talking a relocated aluminum fuel cell under the bed, a 450 Stealth in-tank pump, and proper 8AN Fragola fittings throughout. That's quality components, folks. The stopping power has been seriously upgraded too. Bare 4-piston calipers with 13-inch rotors up front, and a GM disc conversion out back with working parking brake. The suspension's been dropped with lowering springs and new shocks all around. It's sitting on 18-inch Riddler wheels with meaty 275/35 rubber at all 4 corners. Even the little details weren't overlooked. They've added Morimoto dual-burn LED headlights for modern lighting performance. The odometer shows 25,538, but it has rolled over, so actual mileage is unknown. At $17,500, Considering the quality of parts used and the comprehensive nature of the build, you're looking at a lot less than what's been invested. The seller mentions it's been a project truck over the years, and the parts list shows thoughtful upgrades rather than cheap shortcuts. 7. We're checking out a pretty interesting 1977 GMC K15 4Air 4 that's listed for $6,000 OBO, and let me tell you what we're looking at here. This isn't your average stock K15. It's got some nice upgrades under the hood. We're talking about a 350 V8 that's been modified with roller rockers, an Edelbrock intake and carburetor, and headers. The 350 automatic transmission is paired with some serious gearing. 4.56 in both the 12-bolt rear and 10-bolt front axles. That's some proper off-road gearing, folks. The truck's sitting on a 4-inch lift with 33E 12.50/15 tires that the seller says have plenty of tread left. It's pretty cool that both fuel tanks are actually working. That's not always the case with these old trucks. The power windows and locks are a nice bonus too. Now let's be real about the mileage. The odometer shows 107,000, but it's rolled over. So we're looking at unknown actual mileage here. That's pretty common for these old trucks though. At $6,000 OBO, this is actually priced pretty reasonably in today's market, especially considering the upgrades. The 444 square bodies have been climbing in value, and finding one with working dual tanks and power options isn't super common. The lift and tire setup, plus the engine mods, add some value too. This could be a solid choice for someone looking for an old-school 404 with some nice upgrades already done. Just remember, it's still a 46-year-old truck, so expect it to need some typical old truck attention here and there. 8. We're looking at a 1973 Chevy K10 that's caught my eye, listed at $20,000. And let me give you the straight scoop on this classic 4x4. This black beauty is running a 350 4-bolt main engine, which is the more desirable and stronger version of the small block Chevy, paired with a 700 R4 transmission. That's actually a nice upgrade from the original transmission, giving you an overdrive gear for better highway cruising. Being a K10, you've got the 4x4 capability that everyone's after these days. One really important detail the seller mentions is that the truck has all new wiring from front to back. If you know these old trucks, you'll understand why that's a big deal. Electrical issues are common on these classics, so having fresh wiring throughout is a major plus. Now let's talk about that $20,000 price tag. While it might seem steep to some, the market for clean early 70s K10s has gone absolutely nuts in recent years. The seller mentions it's negotiable but doesn't want lowball offers, which is fair given current values. The seller describes it as beautiful and says it runs strong, though I wish we had more specific details about other work that's been done. The photos show what appears to be a clean example, but as always with these trucks, you'll want to do a thorough inspection, especially of the usual rust-prone areas. For someone looking for a clean, classic K10, with some smart upgrades like the 700 R4 trans and new wiring, this could be worth checking out. Just make sure to do your homework on current market values to negotiate a fair deal. 9. We're looking at something really special. A 1971 Chevy K10 that's had some serious upgrades, listed at $29,500. Let me break down this build because there's a lot to unpack here. This isn't your typical K10 restoration. Someone's put some serious thought into modernizing this classic. The heart of the build is a 2005 6.0L Vortec engine that's been properly modified with a custom cam, ported and polished heads, and a 2.5 dual exhaust system. They've paired it with a 2003 4L60 transmission with a 2200 stall converter. That's a solid combination for both performance and reliability. The drivetrain upgrades continue with a 84 Blazer shift-on-the-fly 4WD transfer case, a 12-bolt Posey rear, and a Dana 44 front diff, both running 4.56 gears. It's sitting on 33-inch BF Goodrich mud terrains wrapped around 17-inch wheels. A perfect blend of classic looks and modern capability. What really impresses me is the attention to detail in the modernization. They've added OBD2 diagnostics, modern 2005 Chevy seats with 3-point seat belts, power windows, and a modern old air heat and AC system. The braking system's been upgraded to four-wheel discs with a hydraulic power booster. That's a huge improvement over the original setup. The little details weren't forgotten either. Spray-in bed liner, new headliner and carpet, sliding rear window, and a Hickey brush guard with lights. They've even added a modern fuel pump and maintained diagnostics capability. At $20,500, while it might seem steep, you're looking at a truck that combines classic style with modern reliability and comfort. The odometer shows 24,000 but has rolled over, though with all these upgrades, that's less relevant. 10. We're looking at a pretty interesting 1969 GMC 1500 that's listed for $7,150, and I've got to say, this one's got quite a story to tell. This is a three-generation, one-family-owned truck with the classic 292 inline-six engine and a three-on-the-tree manual transmission. It's a camper special long bed model, which is pretty cool for collectors. The seller's being refreshingly honest about everything here, so let's break it down. First, let's address the elephant in the room. Yes, there's some surface rust underneath and in the bed, with some holes in the usual spots like sills, fender liners, and doors. But they're upfront about it being structurally solid and straight, which is what really matters. What's really interesting is the recent work done. We're talking about a pretty comprehensive refresh of many key systems. They've replaced or rebuilt practically everything in the steering column, added a modern washer pump system, replaced the carburetor with an electric choke setup, and even had it professionally tuned. The suspension's been greased, new tires installed, and they've done all the basic maintenance like oil changes and fluid flushes. Some neat features include dual auxiliary fuel tanks with on-the-fly switching, though they'll need flushing to be used, and all the basics work: heater, radio, and gauges. The truck was repainted blue from its original green about 33 years ago. There is one quirk: it doesn't like to idle when cold until it warms up, but that's pretty typical for these old trucks. 11. We're looking at a 1983 Chevy Silverado diesel that's listed for $3,500, and I'm going to give you the straight scoop on this one. Let's start with the good news. This is an Arizona truck, which typically means less rust than you'd find in other regions. The seller mentions it's super straight, original, and complete, with good chrome and no apparent accident history. It's got some nice factory extras like running boards, a roof rack, and tinted windows. Now, here's where we need to get real. This is a non-running project truck. The seller's honest about never having it running, and apparently it was parked by the previous owner's wife who got tired of it. The odometer shows 115K, but has rolled over, so actual mileage is unknown. The interior needs work, specifically the headliner and dash, which is pretty common for these old squares. Being a diesel model from '83, this would be the 6.2L Detroit diesel engine. These weren't powerhouses, but they were known for their simplicity and durability when properly maintained. However, since this one isn't running, you'll need to factor in what it might take to get it back on the road. At $3,500, you're basically buying a solid platform for a project. The price isn't unreasonable for a complete straight Arizona truck, but remember, you're going to need to invest time and money to get this old diesel running again. Could be something simple, could be something major. That's the gamble with non-running vehicles. 12. We're looking at a 1981 Ford F-150 4x4 short bed that's listed for $3,700, and let me be completely honest about what we're dealing with here. First off, this is definitely a project truck, the seller's being upfront about it not being roadworthy and needing to be towed. It's got the desirable 351 Windsor V8 and an automatic transmission, and while it starts and idles, that's about all it does right now. The brakes need work, and there's mention of other TLC needed to make it drivable. Now for the good stuff. Being a California truck, it's reportedly rust-free, which is a huge plus for these old Fords. The body's straight, and it comes with an extra set of doors with complete glass, which could be handy. It's got a full roll cage with harness, suggesting it might have been set up for some off-road fun at some point. The 4x4 components are all there and supposedly functional. Here's where you need to pay attention. There's no title in hand, just a bill of sale and transfer form, and it owes registration fees. That could be a headache depending on your state's requirements. The interior is admittedly worn with blemishes, so factor in some interior work too. At $3,700 firm, you're buying a solid platform for a project. The lack of rust and the 351WW444 combo make it interesting, but don't forget, you'll need to factor in towing costs, brake work, registration fees, and whatever else it needs to get roadworthy. 13. We're looking at something pretty special. A 1974 Dodge D200 Club Cab listed at $6,990, and this one's got some interesting features that make it stand out. First off, let's talk about what makes this truck unique. It's a club cab, extended cab model, which was pretty rare for '74, and it's packing the mighty 440 cubic inch engine. That's right, this work truck came from the factory with Mopar's big block powerhouse. The seller claims 44,000 original miles, and while that's always worth verifying, the story about it sitting in a barnyard with a camper shell for years makes the low mileage more believable. The good news continues with both fuel tanks being addressed. The rear tank's been thoroughly cleaned, and the front tank is new. It's sitting on new tires, and the seller's confident enough in its condition to say they'd drive it cross-country. That's a pretty bold statement for a nearly 50-year-old truck. Now let's be real about the condition. There's some surface rust present, and the interior is described as sun-kissed, which is a polite way of saying it's got some sun damage. The bed's apparently in decent shape thanks to being protected by that camper shell all those years. At $6,190, or best offer, considering it's a club cab with the 440 engine, the price isn't unreasonable in today's market. These old Dodges are getting harder to find, especially an extended cab configuration with the big block. The seller mentions financial difficulties forcing the sale, which might mean some room for negotiation. 14. We're checking out a 1972 Chevy C10 that's listed for $16,000, and let me give you the straight scoop on this classic pickup. This C10 appears to be a well-preserved example that's been garage kept since at least 2014. The current owners had it for about a decade, and here's what we know. It's running a crate motor that was installed by the previous owner, estimated to have about 20,000 miles on it. That's a nice upgrade, and even better, there's a folder of receipts documenting the work done by the previous owner. Now, let's be honest about the condition. While the seller describes it as being in great shape, there is one notable issue. It has air conditioning, but it's not working. That's pretty common with these old trucks, but it's something to factor into your decision if you're planning to drive it in warmer weather. The seller's being pretty straightforward about the truck's history and their limited use of it. Having documentation from the previous owner's work is a big plus. That's not something you often find with classic trucks. At $16,000, you're in the ballpark for a clean '72 C10 in today's market, especially one with a crate motor and documentation. These early '70s C10s have seen their values climb significantly in recent years, and clean examples are getting harder to find. This could be a solid choice for someone looking for a well-maintained classic truck that's been properly stored and cared for. Just budget for getting that AC fixed if you want modern comfort. 15. We're looking at a 1978 Chevy Cheyenne Big 10 that's listed for $4,500, and let me give you a straightforward take on this classic truck. The Big 10 was Chevy's heavy-duty half-ton model, sitting between the regular C10 and C20 in terms of capacity. This one's showing 74,979 miles on the odometer, and it's packing a V8 with an automatic transmission, though the seller doesn't specify which V8 engine it has. The features list is pretty basic but includes some nice options for a 78, power steering, power brakes, and a tilt steering column. The seller keeps it really brief with "runs great," but honestly, we could use more details about its condition and history. At $4,500, the price is actually pretty reasonable in today's market for a running and driving Cheyenne Big 10, especially if it's as excellent as the seller claims. However, with such a brief description, you'll definitely want to do a thorough inspection before pulling the trigger. Check for the usual square body issues like cab corner rust, floor pan condition, and frame integrity. This could be a good opportunity for someone looking to get into classic trucks without breaking the bank. The Big 10s are getting more attention lately, as people realize their unique place in Chevy truck history. Just remember to ask plenty of questions and inspect thoroughly. The super brief description means there's a lot we don't know about this truck's condition and history. 16. We're looking at something truly special. A 1976 Chevy LUV that's been transformed into an absolute showstopper listed at $16,900. And folks, this isn't your typical LUV truck. Let me break down this incredible build. First off, this is a frame-off restoration with over $75,000 in documented receipts. And it shows. They've completely reimagined this little truck with a 305 V8 and turbo 350 automatic transmission, which is a massive upgrade from the original four-cylinder engine these trucks came with. The attention to detail here is insane. We're talking about a custom-built and powder-coated frame, a hand-built step-side bed, and some really creative touches like those '59 Cadillac taillights. The interior features a narrowed 1956 Bel Air dash with autometer gauges. That's some serious custom work right there. The list of upgrades keeps going. Power disc brakes with chrome booster and master cylinder, a new 4-core radiator, a custom wood bed kit with an integrated fuel cell, and true dual exhaust. With only 3,169 miles since the build, this thing is practically fresh. What really adds value here is the documentation. They've got a complete photo album of the build and all those receipts to prove the investment. That's gold for a custom build like this. At $16,900, considering the documented $75,000 investment and the quality of the work, someone's taking a serious loss here. This could be an amazing opportunity for someone who appreciates custom builds and wants something truly unique. You certainly won't see another LUV like this at your local car show. 17. We're checking out a pretty interesting 1982 Dodge Ram D150 Prospector Edition that's been reduced to $2,500, and let me tell you why this one's worth a look. First off, this is an Arizona truck, which is a big deal. We're talking rust-free, folks. It's a Prospector Edition short bed, which was a special trim package that added some nice features and unique styling elements. Under the hood, you've got the legendary Slant 6 engine paired with an automatic transmission. Not the most powerful setup, but these engines are known for being practically bulletproof. The seller's highlighting some good features here. Power steering, power brakes, with discs, and working AC, which is pretty nice for an 82. The body's straight, the paint's good, and the interior's in good shape. All things you'd hope for from a desert truck. It's sitting on two 35/75 R15 tires that are reportedly in good condition, and bonus points. It comes with the original wheels and hubcaps. Now, about that $10,500 price tag or best offer, while it might seem high for an 82 D150, you've got to consider a few things. It's a rust-free Arizona truck, it's a Prospector Edition, which adds value for collectors, and it appears to be in really solid condition. These early 80s Dodges are starting to gain more attention in the classic truck market. This could be a great choice for someone looking for a clean, well-preserved example of these increasingly collectible Dodge trucks. The Slant 6 might not win any drag races, but it'll probably still be running long after we're all gone. 18. We're looking at a 1979 Ford F-250 that's listed for $5,000, and let me give you the straight scoop on this old workhorse. This F-250's running the 400 cubic inch 6.6L V8 engine, which was a solid power plant for these trucks. The seller's being refreshingly honest here. They're daily driving it and admit it leaks some oil, but hey, that's pretty common for these old Fords. They mention it tows well, which makes sense given the F-250's heavier duty nature. The body's described as being in pretty good shape, and with 250,000 miles on the clock, this truck's definitely seen its share of work. But these old Fords were built tough, and the fact that it's still being daily driven says something about its reliability. At $5,000, you're looking at a usable classic work truck that still has some life left in it. The seller's also open to trades, specifically mentioning smaller 4x4s, which might be interesting for some of you out there. Here's the thing, you're not getting a show truck here. This is a working truck with some oil leaks and the usual wear you'd expect from a vehicle with 250,000 miles. But if you're looking for an old-school F-250 that you can actually use rather than just look at, this might be worth checking out. Just go in knowing you'll probably be keeping an eye on that oil leak and doing the usual maintenance these old trucks need. The good news is these are generally pretty simple to work on. 19. We're checking out something pretty special. A 1969 Ford F-250 camper special that's listed for $19,550. And this one's got some interesting features worth talking about. First off, this is a camper special model, which means it came from the factory, with heavy-duty suspension components and other upgrades designed for carrying slide-in campers. What's really interesting here is the power plant. It's running a turbocharged 4.9L, 300 cubic inch, inline-6 engine. That's not a common setup at all, as these typically came naturally aspirated. It's paired with a 4-speed manual transmission, which is always fun in an old truck. The truck's showing 63,928 miles on the odometer, and it's wearing a green-on-green color combination, which is a classic look for these old Fords. Just note that the toolbox shown in any photos isn't included with the sale. At $19,550, we're definitely in collector territory here. The price reflects several factors. It's a desirable camper special model, it's got that unique turbocharged inline-6 setup, and these late 60s F-Series trucks have been climbing in value. The manual transmission adds appeal for enthusiasts, too. This could be a great choice for someone looking for a unique classic Ford truck that stands out from the crowd. That turbo setup alone would make for some interesting conversations at car shows. Just make sure to thoroughly check out that turbo system, as it's not a factory setup and you'll want to know its history and condition. 20. We're looking at a 1985 Ford F-250 that's listed for $7,000, and let me give you the honest breakdown on this old workhorse. The big news here is what's under the hood. This truck's packing the mighty 460 V8 engine paired with an automatic transmission. That's Ford's big block, and these engines are known for their torque and durability. The seller mentions it runs strong, which is what you want to hear with these power plants. Being a Texas truck is definitely a plus. It's described as having a solid, rust-free body, though the seller's refreshingly honest about its cosmetic condition. They straight up tell us it's got dings, dangs, scratches, etc. because, well, it's 40 years old. I appreciate that kind of straightforward honesty in a listing. The price is $6,995, including tax, title, and registration. And the seller's making it clear it's non-negotiable, no trades, no financing. They're also upfront that this truck is not perfect, but priced accordingly. The tires are reportedly good, which is always a plus. At this price point, you're getting a big block F-250 with a rust-free Texas body. Sure, it's got its share of cosmetic issues, but for someone looking for a solid work truck with plenty of power, this could be worth checking out. These 460 powered trucks are getting harder to find, especially without rust issues.